Have you ever wondered why the very woman who leaves a man shattered, sleepless, and endlessly haunted is often the one he never truly forgets? The woman whose absence echoes louder than her presence ever did. The one who didn't beg, didn't cling, didn't crumble. She walked away, and somehow, in her leaving, she carved herself into his soul. It's not cruelty that binds him to her memory. It's something deeper, something older than language itself. It's the ancient alchemy between the masculine and the feminine, the eternal dance between desire and destruction, between love and the ego's death. When a man meets a woman who can break his heart, he's not meeting another person, he's meeting his unconscious. Carl Jung might have said she is the manifestation of his anima, the feminine aspect buried within his psyche. In her reflection, he glimpses both his salvation and his undoing. For the first time, the mirror doesn't flatter him. It exposes him. Every defense, every illusion of control, every quiet insecurity surfaces in her presence. And though it terrifies him, he is drawn closer, like a moth to a flame that promises both illumination and annihilation. She is not the woman who flatters his ego. She is the one who confronts it. Her silence cuts deeper than any insult. Her boundaries remind him that affection cannot be purchased with attention. Her mystery forces him to reckon with the parts of himself he's spent years avoiding. When she walks away, she doesn't just leave him lonely. She leaves him facing the emptiness within himself. And that is why he can't let her go. Because deep down, he knows she wasn't just a woman. She was a mirror, a teacher, a symbol of everything he still needs to become. To love such a woman is to stand before one's own shadow. The parts he denied, the fears he buried, the tenderness he suppressed. Men fall hardest for women who awaken the truth they have long silenced. They mistake that awakening for love, but it's something far more dangerous. It's transformation. She embodies his lost sensitivity, his repressed longing for connection, his yearning for meaning beyond conquest. In her presence, his spirit stirs. But when she leaves, the lesson begins. Most men do not understand this. They call her cold, detached, manipulative, because they cannot yet see that she was the consequence of their own unconscious projections. Jung wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The man who loves the woman who breaks him is undergoing transformation, though he may resist it with every breath. Her absence becomes his initiation. The initiation into self-awareness, humility, and the painful birth of emotional maturity. You may think she is heartless, but in truth, she is the embodiment of boundaries forged in fire. She once gave too much, loved too freely, and paid with her peace. Now she stands firm, not out of indifference, but out of wisdom. The modern woman who walks away has learned that to be loved without respect is to be slowly erased. She knows that staying in the presence of unhealed masculinity means betraying her own evolution. And so she leaves, not as a rejection, but as an act of self-preservation. And in doing so, she forces the man to confront the echoing truth of what he lost. When he remembers her, it isn't just her beauty he misses. It's the way her authenticity demanded his. Her gaze made him feel seen, but also accountable. Her presence was a challenge, an invitation to rise. And when she left, that challenge remained, whispering in the back of his mind, "Become the man worthy of what you once took for granted." He will try to replace her. He'll chase new distractions, softer energies, easier affection. But no imitation can satisfy what she awakened. Because what he truly wants is not her body or her approval. It's the version of himself that emerged in her light. She revealed to him that he was capable of feeling deeply, that he was more than his performance, his status, his logic. That vulnerability was not weakness, but power misunderstood. And so he clings to the memory of her not as nostalgia, but as a yearning to meet that version of himself again, the man who existed only when he stood in her presence. For the woman, being loved by such a man can feel intoxicating at first. His admiration, his pursuit, his passion, All of it feeds the feminine desire to be seen and desired. But in time, she realizes his love is not for her, but for the idea of her, the projection of his anima. She becomes a symbol in his story rather than a sovereign being in her own. And when she senses that, her soul rebels. She cannot live as a fantasy. She must become real, even if that means breaking his illusion, even if that means breaking his heart. The heartbreak, then, is not cruelty. It's medicine. It's the dismantling of illusion. It's the sacred wound that awakens both to truth. For her, it's the moment she chooses authenticity over approval. For him, it's the moment he learns that love cannot save him from himself. And in that space between pain and awakening, both are changed forever. There is a haunting silence that follows the woman who leaves. It's not the silence of indifference. It's the silence of transcendence. When she walks away, she doesn't slam doors or burn bridges. She simply disappears into her own becoming, and in that quiet, something profound happens. The man who once thought he possessed her begins to realize he never truly knew her at all, because the woman who can break a man's heart was never his to begin with. She belonged to something larger, to the wild current of the feminine archetype that refuses to be contained. She is the embodiment of the anima liberata, the liberated feminine. Jung might have seen her as the manifestation of man's inner guide, his intuitive soul image. But when that image steps out of the unconscious and into flesh, it unsettles him. It terrifies him. He wants to possess her, to make her predictable, to make her safe. But she wasn't born to soothe his chaos. She was born to awaken it, to bring it into light so he can finally see what lives inside. This is why her love feels like fire and her absence feels like death. Because she is the initiator, the sacred mirror, the flame that consumes the false self. You might wonder, why does she seem so powerful in her detachment? It is because detachment is not her indifference. It is her wisdom. She has learned the cost of overgiving. She has carried the weight of being misunderstood, of being the emotional healer in relationships that never offered her sanctuary. Through pain, she has become alchemical, transmuting heartbreak into higher consciousness. Where once she would have pleaded to be seen, now she simply watches. Where once she would have chased, she now withdraws. It's not pride, it's clarity. She has realized that her love is sacred energy, not a commodity to be traded for attention. For the man, her silence is unbearable. His mind replays the memories endlessly. The sound of her voice, the way she looked at him as if she could see straight through his facade. He tries to rationalize, to categorize, to make sense of what happened. But reason fails, because what he feels is not logical, it's archetypal. He is confronting his shadow anima, the part of himself that yearns for union yet fears vulnerability. In losing her, he is forced into the underworld of his own psyche. It's the same descent that every hero must face, the collapse of the ego, the reckoning with the unconscious, the slow rebirth of authentic selfhood. She, too, is tested. There are moments when her strength feels like exile, when she misses the softness of connection, when her heart aches to return. But something deeper keeps her still. She senses that going back would mean self-betrayal, a regression into the version of herself that needed validation more than peace. So she stays in her solitude, learning to hold her own company, learning to love the silence that once terrified her. And in that solitude, she becomes luminous, a woman who no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. The paradox is cruel yet divine. Men love women who break their hearts because those women force them to awaken. The heartbreak is initiation into consciousness. In the ruins of egoic love, the man discovers humility, a humility that births true strength, the kind of love that survives illusion. He begins to understand that what he sought from her was not ownership, but wholeness, that her leaving was not rejection, but redirection, back toward his own unfinished soul. You see, the reason men remember such women for years, sometimes for a lifetime, is not because of physical beauty or passion. It's because she touched the place in him where truth resides, the place he hides even from himself. Her departure leaves a wound that will not close until he integrates what she represented. She was his anima, the call to balance logic with intuition, ambition with compassion, dominance with empathy. Until he answers that call, every relationship after her becomes an echo, a repetition, a ghost of the same lesson he refuses to learn. And yet, there is something sacred about this suffering. It is through heartbreak that both masculine and feminine evolve. The man learns to feel without losing his strength. The woman learns to love without losing herself. Their meeting was never meant to last. It was meant to transform. Jung called this the process of individuation, the integration of opposites into a higher unity. The heartbreak, then, is not an ending, but the necessary friction that awakens consciousness. In a world where love is often reduced to possession, the woman who breaks a man's heart becomes a symbol of freedom. She teaches that love is not ownership, but reflection, that desire is not meant to imprison, but to reveal. The men who loved her will speak of her in fragments, as mystery, as madness, as the one that got away. But deep down, they know she was never lost. She simply became what they could not yet reach. And one day, when the noise of the world fades and their souls grow quiet, they might understand that she did not destroy them. She delivered them from illusion, from dependency, from the version of themselves that was never whole. And so the story continues in the shadows of longing. The man, once proud and certain, now walks through the labyrinth of his own undoing. Each corner of that maze bears her name. Each echo reminds him that love is not the possession of another, but the revelation of oneself. When she left, she did not steal anything from him. She simply withdrew the mirror, and without her reflection, he is forced to meet himself. That is the cruel mercy of the woman who breaks a man's heart. She strips him of illusions and leaves him naked before truth. Her departure, though silent, acts as a catalyst. The pain she leaves behind isn't punishment, it is purification. It burns away the pretense of control, the arrogance of invulnerability, the false idol of perfection he once worshipped within himself. In losing her, he begins to learn what it means to feel, not just to want, but to ache, not just to desire, but to surrender. For the first time, the armor he built to protect himself feels suffocating, and in tearing it off, he rediscovers his humanity. The woman who breaks a man's heart becomes his philosopher. She teaches through absence what no presence could ever explain. She shows him that attachment without awareness is slavery, and love without respect is decay. The moment he realizes this, something inside him cracks, and through that fracture the light of consciousness begins to enter. Jung wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. She was his darkness, beautiful, terrifying, necessary, but make no mistake, she too bleeds in this process. To walk away from a man she once loved is not coldness, it's courage. It's the willingness to lose comfort for the sake of authenticity. In a world that teaches women to settle for crumbs and call it love, the act of leaving becomes revolutionary. She is not the villain of his story. She is the heroine of her own. Her detachment is not a punishment. It's a prayer whispered to her own soul. Never again will I abandon myself in the name of love. And this, perhaps, is the deepest truth of all. Men love women who break their hearts because these women are the first to show them what love truly is. Not a transaction, not a refuge from loneliness, but a mirror that reveals the soul. The heartbreak becomes sacred, a crucible in which both are remade. He learns humility. She learns sovereignty. He learns to feel. She learns to be free. Still, the masculine struggles to understand this dynamic. He has been conditioned to conquer, to view love as victory, affection as possession. When a woman refuses to be conquered, it unsettles his deepest archetype. She embodies the wild feminine, the aspect of life that refuses to be caged. She is the forest that does not bend for his footsteps, the ocean that cannot be mapped. To love her, he must abandon domination and step into devotion. That is the initiation he resists, and the one he secretly longs for. In his dreams, she returns, not as she was, but as an inner figure, softer, wiser, and impossibly distant. He speaks to her image in his mind, not realizing that she has become part of him. The anima, once projected outward, now resides within. Her essence lingers, not to torment, but to guide. Through every failed relationship, every empty encounter, every fleeting pleasure, he senses her presence, the reminder of something real, something sacred, something he lost not because she took it, but because he wasn't yet ready to hold it. Meanwhile, she continues her journey of becoming. She no longer seeks to be understood, for she knows that mystery is her nature. She no longer seeks to be loved in exchange for her softness, for she has learned to love herself fiercely. Her worth is no longer determined by whether he returns, repents, or realizes what he lost. Her worth simply is. She walks through the world with quiet power, a woman who has touched her own depth and returned with the treasure of self-respect. And yet there is tenderness in her strength. She does not wish him harm. She knows he is not her enemy, but her mirror, the reflection of her own lessons. In breaking his heart, she also broke a cycle, the endless repetition of self-sacrifice for love. Through her departure, she claimed her freedom, and in doing so, offered him the chance to find his own. Whether he takes it is not her concern anymore. She has learned that healing cannot be forced, that love cannot rescue those unwilling to awaken. The woman who breaks a man's heart does not belong to tragedy. She belongs to transformation. Her story is not about cruelty, but evolution. She is both the flame and the aftermath, both the test and the teacher. And though she may walk alone, she walks in truth. The men who loved her will remember her not as the one who left, but as the one who woke them from sleep. And one day, when his own soul ripens, he may look back and whisper a silent thank you, not to her image, but to the part of himself she helped him find. Because in the end, love is not about who stays or who leaves. It's about who awakens. And those who awaken because of her will never be the same again. There comes a moment when the ache softens, when the pain that once felt unbearable begins to take on a strange beauty, like a scar that no longer hurts but reminds you of where you were reborn. For the man, that moment arrives quietly. He realizes that what once felt like loss was actually liberation. The woman who broke his heart didn't destroy him. She dismantled the false self he had mistaken for his truth. She forced him to meet the parts of himself he buried beneath pride, performance, and fear. And though she is gone, her lesson remains. Love is not meant to complete you, it is meant to reveal you. The woman, too, feels the shift. Her solitude no longer feels like exile. It feels like sovereignty. The world that once seemed empty without him now feels vast, alive, open with possibility. Her silence, once born from heartbreak, becomes a sanctuary. She learns that detachment isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of peace. It's the realization that no one can take from her what she no longer gives away carelessly. The woman who once sought validation now radiates self-assurance. She no longer waits to be chosen. She has chosen herself. In Jungian terms, she has integrated her own animus, the inner masculine within her that represents strength, clarity, and purpose. Where once she looked for these qualities in a man, she now finds them within her own soul. The same energy that once longed for rescue now builds her empire. The same tenderness that once begged to be understood now fuels her creativity. Through heartbreak, she has met her own completeness. Through loss, she has become whole. Meanwhile, the man faces his own metamorphosis. The version of him that sought validation through control dominance or emotional withdrawal begins to dissolve. The heartbreak stripped him bare, and now, in his vulnerability, he begins to touch something sacred: empathy. He starts to feel the depth of the feminine not as something to possess, but something to honor. His love, once hungry and impulsive, becomes calm, intentional, and present. He begins to understand that true masculinity is not conquest. It is containment, the ability to hold space without demanding possession, to protect without suffocating, to love without fear. And though they walk separate paths, their souls remain connected, not through attachment, but through transformation. She was the mirror that revealed his depth. He was the fire that awakened her strength. Their story was not meant to end in permanence, but in awakening. Like alchemists, they transmuted pain into wisdom, desire into consciousness. The heartbreak became the philosopher's stone, the turning of lead into gold, illusion into enlightenment. Yet, society rarely understands this kind of love. The world still calls her too much, too mysterious, too independent, too unwilling to settle. But she no longer flinches at their words. She knows that her too much was never the problem. It was their too little awareness, too little courage to meet her at depth. She no longer apologizes for her intensity, for her standards, for the way she demands presence instead of performance. She has learned that her energy is sacred currency, and she spends it only where truth is honored. And he, in his own quiet evolution, begins to see that not every woman who walks away is heartless. Some leave because they love truth more than comfort. Some leave because they refuse to mother the unhealed boy within a man. Some leave because they understand that staying would mean dimming their light to soothe his fear. And when he finally sees that, when he sees her strength not as rejection but as reflection, the cycle breaks. He stops chasing ghosts and starts building self-awareness. He stops asking, "Why did she leave me?" and begins to ask, "What was I meant to learn?" The answer comes slowly, through stillness, through solitude, through the humbling process of self-discovery. He learns that love is not a battlefield but a mirror, that heartbreak is not failure but invitation, to grow, to heal, to remember. And when he finally stands before his own reflection and no longer feels shame, resentment, or longing, only gratitude, that's when he knows he has completed the initiation. He has become whole. She, in her light, continues her journey. Men still notice her, drawn to her aura, her unshakable sense of self. But now she sees through the eyes of discernment. She no longer confuses intensity with intimacy, attention with affection, potential with presence. She loves but differently, without losing herself. She gives but wisely, without expectation. Her love is now a choice, not a compulsion. Her boundaries are sacred, not walls. She embodies what Jung might call the individuated feminine, a woman integrated with both softness and strength, spirit and shadow. And so, the cycle that began with heartbreak ends in awakening. Both the masculine and the feminine, once lost in projection and desire, meet themselves through the mirror of each other. It was never about punishment. It was about evolution. The woman who breaks a man's heart becomes the archetype of transformation, the embodiment of truth that demands to be faced. And the man who endures her departure becomes the archetype of awakening, the seeker who learns that love, when purified by loss, leads not to despair but to wisdom. Their story, like all great myths, doesn't end with happily ever after. It ends with awareness, the only true form of love that lasts beyond the body, beyond the relationship, beyond time itself. The kind of love that exists in the silent knowing between souls that have burned, broken, and been reborn. In the aftermath of awakening, something subtle yet profound begins to shift in the collective psyche. The woman who once symbolized heartbreak becomes a myth, not of cruelty but of resurrection. She stands as an archetype of the evolved feminine, intuitive yet grounded, empathetic yet unyielding, loving yet unattached. Her presence carries the quiet authority of one who has walked through the fire and emerged untouched by the smoke. She no longer needs to prove her worth. She is her worth, living, breathing, radiant proof that love without self-awareness is dependency, and loss without reflection is wasted pain. The man who once felt destroyed by her departure now understands. He sees that she wasn't punishing him, she was initiating him. She was the psychological threshold between the man he was and the man he was meant to become. Her absence forced him to confront the hollow spaces where authenticity should have lived. It made him question his idea of masculinity, the facade of control, the suppression of emotion, the worship of strength without tenderness. She broke not his heart but his delusion, and in doing so, she returned him to his soul. This is the paradox of true transformation. You cannot awaken through comfort. You cannot evolve through validation. Growth demands friction. It demands loss, chaos, uncertainty, the dismantling of what was safe but false. That is why the men who meet women like her never truly forget them. She becomes an internal compass, a standard of depth that casual affection can never replicate. She is the reminder that love is meant to expand you, not anesthetize you. And yet, for the woman, this power is not easy to hold. She is often misunderstood, even vilified. People call her intimidating, difficult, unapproachable, because she will not play small to fit into someone's comfort zone. But she knows that her presence threatens not the man's heart, but his ego. The ego craves adoration. The soul craves awakening. And she feeds the soul, not the mask. To those unready for that, she will always seem like chaos. To those ready to evolve, she will seem like grace incarnate. This woman is not against men. She is against unconsciousness. She desires connection, but not dependency. She seeks depth, not dominance. And she gives freely, but only to those who meet her with presence. To love her is to be seen in all your imperfection. To stay with her is to embrace your own shadow. She will not flatter your wounds. She will reveal them. She will not soothe your fear of inadequacy. She will ask you to face it. And that is why she both captivates and terrifies, because she is the end of pretending. The man who dares to stay, who does not run when confronted with himself, discovers something sacred. In her presence, he learns that vulnerability is not weakness but initiation. He begins to express rather than perform, to listen rather than control, to protect not from fear but from reverence. His masculinity becomes divine, not through domination but through devotion. He no longer seeks to own her. He seeks to honor her. And in that moment, love transforms from a battlefield into a sanctuary. But not all men are ready for that sacred balance. Some will still search for easier love, the kind that does not challenge, the kind that soothes the ego rather than awakens the spirit. And that's fine. The world moves in cycles of readiness. But they will remember her, not as the woman who left, but as the one who revealed truth. Her name may fade, her face may blur, yet her energy becomes a part of their story forever. Every choice they make afterward, every woman they love, every silence they break, every apology they give, will carry her influence. And for her, there is peace in knowing this. She does not gloat, she does not regret. She understands that to break someone's heart is not always cruelty. Sometimes it's the only way to free them. She has learned the sacred art of release, to let go without bitterness, to love without clinging, to move on without closure. Her power lies not in how many hearts she touches, but in how many awaken because of her. She has become the living embodiment of amor fati, love of fate, the stoic acceptance that what must end is as sacred as what begins. Time softens even the deepest wounds. One day the man may meet her again, perhaps briefly, perhaps in passing. Their eyes will meet, and there will be no anger, no longing, only quiet understanding. He will see the peace in her gaze and know that she has forgiven, not him but herself, forever needing his validation. And she will see in him a man who has grown, who has faced himself, who now loves without fear. And for a brief moment both will recognize the beauty of what was, not a tragedy, but a transformation disguised as loss. This is the great secret of love through the Jungian lens, that every heartbreak is a dialogue between souls, an exchange between archetypes, a lesson in becoming whole. The woman who breaks his heart is not his downfall, but his awakening. And she, too, evolves, from lover to teacher, from healer to sovereign. Together they complete the sacred cycle: union, destruction, transcendence. And when the dust of their past has settled, she no longer needs to be remembered. For the power she once embodied in his life now lives within him, and the love he once sought from her, she now carries effortlessly within herself. The two are free, no longer bound by illusion, but blessed by the memory of what awakening cost and what it gave. For the greatest love stories are not about possession, but evolution. And the truest lovers are not those who stay forever, but those who teach us to return to ourselves. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.